Well, hello there.
Well, hello there. Top of the morning. I said that to someone recently, and they thought I was quoting song lyrics from one of the rappers, like
What,
Babe
top
or
of the
someone.
morning?
Yeah. Oh, who is it? It was someone
I
at
don't
work.
know. What,
and
an Irish rapper?
Yeah, it was my
What,
guy
yeah?
Zach from work, and I typed him top of the morning just because I just say that. I don't know sometimes.
Probably
And
because you're like a quarter
and then
Irish.
apparently it's part of some apparently it's part of some quite inappropriate rapping lyrics that he thought it was, but anyway it wasn't. It was just a greeting, all right. Top of the morning.
Okay, wow.
Anyways, hi everyone.
We'll stick to English
Yeah, we will.
expressions of saying hello.
Don't
Don't know why I said it like that. Anyways,
missed you guys.
Yeah.
Been a whole week.
I know. We are definitely still getting back into the flow.
The flow of the pod life.
Yeah.
But it's feeling good.
It's feeling good.
It's feeling good to be back. Yeah, did a bit of a kind of drop, didn't we? We didn't really tell anyone we're coming back, and then just
Yeah, a bit like Beyonce. Just drops an album. Wow.
You could liken it to someone
Yeah.
like Beyonce, for example.
Yeah.
Adele, when she came back with 30, you know?
Yeah, just drop it.
We just dropped it like it's hot.
Yeah, and we're just thinking we're pretty much at that kind of caliber of, artists
People went wild.
creating, and
We had to turn Instagram notifications off, didn't we?
phone was blowing up.
We're joking, guys, but
Yeah, please hear that we're joking.
yeah. But we do hope you enjoyed our first couple of episodes.
Yeah, and now we're on number 3 or 4. Don't
A
know.
lot of hairs on this rug. Just saying, just picking these off.
Oh gosh, look at that.
I know.
Flipping Nora.
Flipping.
Don't know if you can
out.
see
To
that on the
anyone
camera, but
coming
that is an
round-
actual hairball.
To anyone coming around me and my brother's flat, let's just try and respect the rug, all right?
I think that's your hair, mate.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Or
It could be
Josh's.
mine. Who knows? It's not
Um,
Josh's. That's way too long to be Josh's hair.
Yeah, true.
Anyways, I think we should just dive into this one.
Yeah, guys, this is going to be quite a...
It's a bit of a different one,
It's
really.
going to be a nice little episode, this. What are we going to be talking about, Soph?
So, I'll say that it's not just you, and then we can give context.
Go on.
So the title of this episode is, it's not... Oh, I've messed it up. Start again. It's not just you that realise their friendship needs to change. Context. Rach, go.
Context. Well, today's episode is, it's more going to be me and Soph chatting about our friendship over the last year. I guess in a roundabout way, it's a bit of like a catch up with us, kind of where we're at over the last year and some of the changes. And we just thought it could be useful for someone out there in terms of just hearing a bit of our story.
But I guess it feels different for us to record because often when we're recording, it's more through the lens of speaking generally to the general people who are listening.
Yeah.
Whereas this is actually going to be more of like a bit of a deep dive into some of the real specific conversations that we personally were having and feelings that we were feeling. And yeah, I guess more related just to us.
Yeah.
And our journey of friendship.
Rather than applying it to other people, but hopefully you can listen and find something useful.
Yeah, or just enjoy it, or just maybe it's
just get to know us
for whatever reason, interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm just a nosy person, so
Yeah.
I just like to hear about these things. So maybe other people feel the same.
Yeah, and the overall point that we're trying to make in this is, I guess, speaking to anyone who has close friendships, and just the way that it's good to keep them healthy.
Yeah.
That's the take home, isn't it?
Yeah.
The take home point. But I would say over the last year we have experienced change in our friendship.
Yes.
I mean, how long have we been friends now?
7 years.
7. I feel like it's getting to 8. I think we've been saying 7 for a while.
2017 September is when we met.
Okay, so we're in our 8th year.
Yeah.
Oh my days.
In our 8th year, so we'll turn 8
We'll turn 8.
We'll turn 8 in September, guys. You're all
Yeah.
invited to the party.
Yeah.
When we turn 10, we will be having a big bash.
Yeah, of course. But throughout that, there's been loads of change. But like in today's episode, we're just going to focus on the last year, because if you've listened to our first episode back, there's been general life change whilst I've been away for 6 months. But in that, we just had a couple of revelations, didn't we?
We did.
And we thought we'd share them with you today.
So we're going to take you back to, let's say, January 2024, start of this year. Oh gosh, where to begin? Should we give some, again, I think we need to give some context.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, so I think probably the first big change that happened in our friendship was, December, January, when I got into a relationship.
Yeah.
And that was obviously like a big change in life in general. But I would say, obviously, that in itself isn't a big change in our relationship, in our friendship. But I would say it was like a trigger of change that then led to conversations that we were having. But prior to that, I had been single for like 2 years, and I would say we were just in quite a nice flow rhythm of it's me and you against the world. Obviously, we've also got a unique friendship, which we need to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Like, we are literally working together and we have a podcast together, and that's a whole other dynamic that adds like a whole new level of depth and like intimacy to a friendship, because we're like doing this passion project that we believe in together. But
even before that,
yeah,
like,
but even before that,
our actual jobs, we were working at the same place, we were living in the same house, and then on top of that doing Sophie and Rach YouTube podcast stuff. So there have been kind of, I'd say, peak moments of there's really nothing separating us, in the sense of our lives are almost completely overlapping, in work, in friendships, in living situation. Like, there was complete overlap almost.
Yeah. And even just beyond that, we just had a very close friendship. In terms of like, in general, even if you're not living together, working together, obviously a lot of people out there have a best mate, or they have someone that's their go-to person. And obviously, we've been each other's person for a long time. And I think when you're both single, there's just a new level of investment and energy and time you can give to each other. And like all those simple things in a relationship of like, you finish your day and you pick up your phone and you ring them, or you tell them about something. I think when you're single, even more so, your friends are those people. They're the people that you're telling, or your family, or whatever it is for you. But for us, it was each other. And then I think when one of you then gets into a relationship, there's a dynamic shift there of like, oh, they've now got someone else to balance their time with. And we've chatted about that in other episodes.
Yeah.
But how did that feel for you, or what came out of that?
I think for me, it was, we're just, like I said, it's going to be speaking into just the specifics of our feelings and emotions. But for me, I couldn't almost shake this feeling of almost just feeling that it was unbalanced, and I didn't like it. Like, I really didn't like that. For me, Rach was still like my go-to person, and not that I wasn't her go-to person or one of her go-to people, but she also had another go-to person now. And in some ways, like, when I actually looked at our friendship and how much we would be like texting or seeing each other, it actually wasn't crazily different, because also at this point our friendship has separated a bit more anyway. Like, we're not living together, we're not seeing each other every day, working together. But it was almost just this I can't even describe it, but it almost felt like an injustice on me. Like, how is that fair that you're my only person, but I'm not your only person? And like I said, outplaying in terms of what that looked like, I didn't actually feel it was that different, but it was more just a head thing of like, it's not fair. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah. I
would say, in terms of you getting into a relationship and just feeling a bit like, well, I'm more committed to this now because, I think I described it to you at one point of, it's almost like I could give you 100%, but you could only give me 50%, which is actually not a useful way of looking at it. But I think in this kind of state of thinking was just how I felt. It almost felt like you're splitting between two, and I've got one person that I'm kind of doing life with and sharing. Obviously had other friends, but like we're talking about, I guess, this intense friendship or an intense point in our friendship. So that's how I was feeling.
Yeah.
This is kind of the start of this year.
Yeah. And like, I think that makes complete sense in terms of, I think anyone in a super close friendship, when one of them starts dating someone else, that is just an adjustment for all those reasons. So it's like, it kind of presents a tricky situation where I would say all of those feelings are like valid, and I completely understood them at the time. But I think it's then in how you deal with that is then hard, isn't it? Because I think for both of us, it was like this realization. I remember talking about this of like, okay, Soph's finding this hard. Does that mean I'm going to break up with my boyfriend? No. So then it was like this.
Can't believe that.
Yeah, this
so unreasonable.
This thing of like,
and obviously I was never advocating.
No,
for you
of
to break
course
up.
not. Of
Just
course
want to
not.
clear that up.
No, but you know where you're like, oh, so a
Yeah,
solution to like this problem is like, oh, I just continue being single. But then you're like, that's not actually a solution to the problem, because like it's not realistic, and it's not.
But it is that hard thing where you're like looking at it like, my friend's hurting.
Yeah.
And I know this
There's
is the
nothing
reason
I
why
can
she's
do.
hurting. So in any other, well, not any, but in a lot of other situations, you will go, oh, well, I'll just change that. And I'll stop doing that, or I'll start doing that. Whereas it's like, well, I'm not going to break up with my boyfriend.
Yeah.
So it's like that weird thing where you're then in a position of, well, what can I actually do?
Yeah. And I remember you saying to me, like, you almost realized that, and you were like, I actually have a choice now of like, because I've been there as well, because I've struggled with this in other contexts of like when my friends have got into relationships and it's been difficult. And I think deep down you do just kind of hope, or not even hope, but you just think, oh, maybe they will break up, or maybe like
If I kick
can
up
have
enough
my
of a
friend.
fuss.
Yeah, or like you want to express the fact that you're finding it hard, because otherwise it just feels like this unjust situation.
And that's the thing. I think that's also what I was feeling. It was the injustice of like you say, I know this can't change, but I'm still finding it hard. So if I then go into all these conversations and just go, yeah, it's fine, or just act like it's completely fine, you almost feel like, but then they're not going to know how hard I'm finding it.
Yeah.
And so I need to show them that I'm like not happy about this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I feel like as humans, we just struggle to do that often. Like,
oh yeah,
I can't change this. And actually, therefore, the best thing for me to do is just actually support it, back it, and try and like.
But that is really hard. And I remember you saying to me, like, because I think even we were having a lot of conversations about it, and I remember you being like, actually, it's not necessarily helpful for me to keep talking about it, because like nothing's going to change. It's just simply a time thing of like over time adjusting to a new norm. And I would say from my perspective on reflection, I think I could have done that adjustment better, because I know I said earlier, like there's nothing you can do. But I think as the friend being in a relationship, there obviously are small things you can do to still show that you're thinking about your friend, that you want to be with your friend, that you want to share with your friend, you want them to be as involved as they were. And I think for a lot of people, they look to the person who's got into a relationship to initiate and to show that they still care, out of that place of like, because they feel kind of abandoned or like a bit like rejected in some way. It's like, I'm looking to you to initiate.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think where we're at. I think we're probably still in January at this point.
Yeah. And
then I don't know how you see it, but then in my head, so like you said, I remember one big conversation kind of getting everything out, and after that was kind of like, I think this is going to be the last conversation we have like this, because otherwise we are just going to be going around in circles unless anything new develops or changes. Like, I'm not just going to, every time I see you, I'm finding it really hard that you've got a boyfriend now.
Yeah, and just to say, I do think it is important to have the space where the friend can, like, you.
Yeah.
It's really important that Soph like expressed to me like how she was feeling. But I think the point we're making is like, okay, once you've done that a few times and there's nothing new to say, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like we know this is hard, it's going to be fine, we're going to like navigate through it. So actually over talking about it isn't helpful once you've said the thing.
Because then it just becomes, every time we hang out, it's just this really heavy conversation and we're both getting upset or frustrated with each other. So anyway, so kind of had that conversation. Then in my mind, I'm skipping to, this was around the time of my birthday, and we had both gone home, as in to my home in Nottingham, and
to hang out, for your birthday.
for my birthday, and had like another bigger conversation, but around, I guess, almost a slightly different discovery of new information and within the friendship, or new, I guess, understanding of, I guess more from my end of understanding of maybe why I was feeling or struggling with you getting a boyfriend. Also, again, to put on top of this, you were leaving to move to Brazil for 6 months in a few weeks. And so I think on top of just the general, I'm struggling that you've got a boyfriend now, there was the feelings of, flip. Also, I'm not going to have you here in Birmingham. Am I going to find that really hard? I want to spend time with you before you go. But obviously you've got other people that you want to see. You've just got into a relationship, so you're trying to make sure you have time with
it was very
him.
intense.
So I'd say this is all in quite an intense time. But on reflection, again, it was good. I think it's that thing where there's pressure. It kind of sometimes brings some stuff to the surface, which in hindsight was, I think, really helpful and really needed. Anyway, in Nottingham, hanging out, I think is that would you say that's a similar timeline for you? Am I jumping ahead? Okay. I would say I then kind of had some wider revelation around just my view of our friendship, and actually maybe putting pressure on our friendship to be something that was almost beyond the expectations of a friendship, which was probably why you getting into a relationship was making me feel like rejected, just kind of betrayed, or like at a loss. Because for me, I guess a bit of, spoken about this on the podcast a little bit before, but where I've never had a boyfriend, don't actually know 100% if I want to get married or would want to be in a relationship right now anyway. So then for me, like my friendship with Rach, and obviously you've been single for the last 2 years, had very much been, do you know what? Like life would be pretty sweet if we could just carry on with the way things are. And just two friends kind of living life, doing things together. Not that I'm obviously living in this weird relationship with Rach in my mind, but I guess in the way that, like we were saying, there are similar tendencies to how a couple operates, almost when you're single, with how you might operate with your best friend. Like, you're the person that I text, you're the person I go on holiday with, you're the person that, if there was a big life decision, I would be discussing it with you. And I think had essentially just crept into this state of almost viewing our friendship in a slightly just unhealthy way, or putting too much pressure, too much expectation on it for you. And then I guess where all this is going on in my subconscious, then for you, when you were not meeting those expectations, it was upsetting me, or it was hard for me to come to terms with. Or like I said, you then get into a relationship and you feel rejected, or you feel like, I had this unspoken plan in my mind of us just cracking on with life together, and then you've kind of ruined that. But this is all in my brain. And I remember you saying, what were you saying? Something about like sometimes just feeling like you were never
living up to like your expectations. Because I remember there was like some things that had happened and I'd upset you because like you had expectations of how I was going to be, and I hadn't met that. And I do think some of that was valid, like in that context. But then some of it, I think we then realized actually that's an unfair expectation. Or like not unfair, just like I'm not going to be able to give that. And I think we both just realized that of like, okay, like this makes a lot of sense. We're doing our life together. We love each other a lot. Like we spend a lot of time together. But at the end of the day, we are friends, and you know, in the same way, like we've kind of had conversations where it's like there is just like we are such advocates for deep friendship and beautiful friendship, and you know, if neither of me or Soph wanted to get married, or you know, if you're in a friendship group and loads of you don't want to get married, it's like, do your life with your friends. That's amazing. But in this context, like I am in a relationship, so in a relationship there comes those expectations to your partner and to your yeah, like in a way that's different to that with your friends. And I think we just realized, oh yeah, like there is a limit to friendship of like in some contexts it might work, but in other contexts it's like, for example, if one of you was going to move to the other side of the world, the other person doesn't immediately do that in the same way that you would if you were married or you were in a romantic relationship where it's like we're building a life together. And I think for us, our friendship just falls in such an interesting in between of like I was saying at the start, like we do this podcast and we love, like we've got dreams beyond, you know, just our friendship and like passion projects, and therefore it makes so much sense that almost some of these expectations have begun to like fall into our friendship. But I think what was so amazing was then the timing of me going away, because that basically meant that Soph could almost just have the space and the like room to dig into some of her other friendships and like live in a reality of where I actually was totally removed, like not even removed in like, oh, I've got a boyfriend sense, but just removed, almost ripping the band-aid off of like, I'm not there, we can't be like journeying every day or, you know, our everyday life together in the same way, which also as an aside, I would find hard as well. It's not just you that would like find that hard. But that meant that then me coming back in end of July meant our friendship felt and looked quite different, which maybe we could like chat about now, of like, you know, in a really healthy way, felt like there was a little bit more distance, or, you know, where Soph had invested in other friendships or had become more established for herself. I think I then came back and saw that and was like so genuinely grateful and like happy about that, and could see that even for you in your mind that was like healthier and a better place to be in, but was also then a shift for me of like, oh, this now feels different, and maybe there's times where we feel a little bit more distant in a really healthy way, but it's just change and it's something else to navigate.
Yeah. And it's that whole thing of, I guess, grieving, you know, as much as we were before you left coming to terms with, oh, actually maybe there's some parts of this friendship which aren't 100% healthy, or we need to slightly shift, which is obviously good, but then you've been operating in this particular way within your friendship for however long. So regardless of whether the shift is good, it almost feels like, oh, but things have changed and that makes me feel weird, or that sometimes feels like you said there's more distance between us, or oh, are we not as close anymore? And I guess if, you know, even if, let's say you were in a toxic relationship or like a toxic romantic relationship, even though I'm sure lots of people would be advocating for that to end, it wouldn't mean that you would just 100% feel, oh, amazing, it's over. There would probably be still rhythms and routines that you had become accustomed to that you're then having to let go of, and that just feels weird because that's how you've operated and lived your life for so long. And so, yeah, like you say, I think when you came back, you are then just trying to wrap your head around, no, this is good, but in some ways if you look at it from the outside or on paper, it could look as though, oh, are we not as close anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. But I think overall, it's like the point is sometimes there are boundaries or there are changes you need to make in a friendship to keep it healthy. Because like, I think really unknowingly, there had just been like parts of our friendship that just weren't functioning well. And like, it sounds quite extreme being like healthy, unhealthy, but like, obviously at that point before I left, both of us weren't happy. And like, actually our friendship was causing like, you know, just like hurt for both of us and like sadness and like just it wasn't great. So it's like, okay, we actually need to like stop here and evaluate and work out what's going on. And It's funny because I do think some people listen to this podcast and think, whoa, guys, you're really deep in your friendship. Like, you've done a full psychoanalysis of each other and like your tendencies. But like, ultimately, I think because our friendship is so beautiful and can bring about so much good and beauty, it's like if it's not functioning well, it can be really destructive. So it's like, this is kind of almost the price or the cost of like having really deep friendship. When it functions well, it's amazing, but you have to keep it functioning well. And that like requires a lot of conversations or checking in or evaluating like, oh, you're feeling upset or I'm feeling insecure or this is going on, like what's actually going on. So yeah, I think these conversations are good.
Yeah. Do we want to say a little bit about, I guess, I don't know, what our friendship looks like now? I feel like we've not really gone into like
Yeah.
the bit when you came back.
Well, obviously I came back and I think it was just about like establishing a new norm. And I think what's been so interesting in this year in general is like, for me, it's been very turbulent and a lot of change. So in terms of like establishing new routines, that's been like a process. And I would say almost now kind of feels like a little bit more settled. Because even when I first got back, it's like, it's so chaotic. It's summer. We've not been able to see each other. We've not been able to hang out. And then even now, just for me, like my boyfriend's been away and he's just got back. So this now enters a new era of like establishing. But I just think like one thing that I think we do really well is just like communicate. And I think like if there's a conversation that needs to be we have it. And you can't like control change. Like it just keeps coming at you and you're like, that can be frustrating. But I think I can see like in a few months, the change will have stopped and like we will hopefully be able to establish a bit of a new norm. But then you don't know, like you never know what's around the corner. So it's like the most important thing for us over the last few months, I would say, is just been like chatting about how we're feeling and keeping some of those like new boundaries in place, which can feel like hard, but I think overall has been really good.
Yeah, I do think I mean, for me, I guess, speaking from my perspective, obviously when Rach left, I wasn't going to like keep all of these Rach-sized holes in my week. Like, this is the day I'd normally see Rach. So, I'm going to dress in black and just mourn the fact that she's not here. So, my life, and it was in some ways amazing because, like I said, where maybe I'd put pressure on my friendship or my friendship with Rach, it was actually really nice to see, do you know what? I do have other, and I knew this before. I'm not saying I didn't know this. I have really solid friendships and great people around me. And not to be like obviously I did miss Rach, but at the start of the year I was like, flip, how am I going to get through the next 6 months?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, like it's fine.
Also, just as an aside, I would say generally beyond our friendship at the start of the year, both of us were in quite intense, chaotic times of our lives, which definitely exacerbated everything. Like, I was like in such an intense season of like change. You also weren't doing great.
No.
So it's like there was even more pressure on our friendship to like provide for each other.
Yeah.
You're all I've got.
Now you're leaving me. But as much as I did miss you, Rach, I think at the start of the year, I was like, how am I going to make it through the next 6 months? And in reality, it was fine. And people would be like, are you okay? Like, are you okay that Rach isn't here? And I was like, yeah. Like, I'm like,
thriving.
I really miss Rach, but I think it was a helpful time to show me that there's great stuff in your life away from just your friendship with Rach and just to take some of the pressure off it. But I think then when you came back and even sometimes still now, I'll really, well, not really, but I will sometimes struggle with those thoughts of, I would never want you to feel like, I've actually realised I don't need you anymore. And like, I'm doing other stuff with other people now, so you can just fit around me. Or like, I think just conscious that, I just would never have wanted you to make, I would never have wanted to make you feel like, I don't need you anymore, or I've got these other people, or, I've replaced you. So
yeah. And I think the reality is like, obviously, like I said, it's an adjustment coming back, but that's why I'm saying like the overall point of sometimes change needs to happen to create a healthier friendship. And I'm not there saying like, oh yeah, that's been super easy, and there aren't times where I'm like, oh, like struggling that it feels different, but it's like the overarching reason for that like makes it worth it. And I also think like, even though, okay, yeah, some of our, you know, day-to-day interactions or whatever might feel different, I do also just think like we're at a point where it's like we've got so many years of friendship that it's like there are like almost just feeling secure in the fact that like our friendship isn't really like any other friendship, and there are kind of things we've been through or things we've like, you know, built together that just like is so unique to you and me. And it's like, I don't know, I think with time also just comes security of like, I know where we stand and the like friendship that we have and the love we have for each other, and there are going to be tweaks that like make that healthier, but like that's okay. So yeah, man.
It's so funny. Essentially one of the reasons that we ended up recording this podcast is because we have a little Soph and Rach notebook that mostly Rach writes things down in, like ideas or thoughts that we're having around the podcast. And you flipped onto this page. I think this was like probably even 2023.
Yeah.
Where no, it was 2023, where we knew that you were going at this point in February. And I think we were just a bit like, oh gosh, because obviously you were going, but then it's not just that you're going, you don't know then what's going to happen off the back of you being away. And we've drawn this little picture about our lives not always aligning fully, but
always being brought back together. And then I opened
it's so cringe.
I opened it this morning and literally started crying.
And then I started crying.
Yeah. I think just when you're taken back to that moment of like, and I think that's overall what we're saying, where it's just like when you're in friendships where you have so much love for each other, it is like intense. And it's like, because it's such a special thing, it also just means a lot to you. Like it's like a heart kind of thing. And that's why, like, to end this episode, I think I just want to say to anyone who is like, you know, has like really close friendships, like it's okay to like feel upset about them and to have to navigate them and to have to like have hard conversations or work things out at times, because to me that just shows you've got a really beautiful friendship and you've got a friendship that means a lot to you, and that's such a like privilege and such a beautiful thing. So like have the hard convos and work through the change. And yeah,
and I would also say try not to, my last words of advice, try not to romanticize the past too much.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when you think, oh, but just remember when like we were students and we could just spend all day just hanging out and we lived in the same house and we would just walk onto campus and we would be in the library and like, you know, where, I don't know, I think it's easy to look back on things and just remember all the easy parts and, oh, it just felt so simple then, and oh, can we go back to the good old days? And actually I think that can just be quite dangerous, because then when you're in the moment that you're in, you're just like, oh, well, this sucks and it's all changed and it's all different.
Also, like, this is the uniqueness of having like an 8-year-long friendship, or like a long-term friendship. You're going to go through so many eras, like so many different times and changes, and like each one has like good in it. So
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure if you ask people who have been friends for 20, 30, 40 years,
era after era,
there's many things to come that we haven't even begun to think about navigating. So
yeah,
here's to change.
Guys, hope you enjoyed this one. I mean, I feel like it's quite like serious, but it's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
just unpacking some real time feelings for you.
Yeah.
So hope you enjoyed this little insight.
And we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.